Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Circle of the World podcast, where we discuss Joe Abercrombie's First Law series. I am one of your hosts, Lord Chamberlain Jeffrey, and here are my co-hosts.
Lector George.
And Harrison, the Adept Historical.
We continue our coverage of Last Argument of Kings, the third book in the original trilogy. And for this episode, we'll be covering the Wounded and Patriotic Duties. So, let's get started. Usually, as usual, we have to thank you all for your support. We see only 15 downloads for the episode that just released, and we are going to attribute that to Buzzsprout acting like a goddamn fool, lying to us. Right, George?
Technical difficulties.
Yeah.
Definitely not. Everybody's stop listening.
To be fair, guys, we always say we only get 15 views anyways.
True. Buzzsprout out here acting a goddamn fool. Has nothing to do with the most offensive jokes that I was making the last episode.
All right, I managed to cut most of those out for the blooper episode, so it's fine.
That blooper episode is going to be fire.
Either that or it will get us completely removed from the platform.
Oh yeah, we'll probably be banished to the Shadow Realm or to the other side. Just want to remind you all, please, to continue to follow us on social medias and our YouTubes. I did notice we got one or two a couple of new followers on Instagram, a couple on Twitters. We got a comment on our "Is Bi as an Eater" video, which I wholeheartedly agree with. Forget that gentleman's name. I should look for it. But I will look for it at another time. Do you guys want to say anything before we move on right to the chapter read-throughs?
I'm just looking at that comment right now for the first time, and I absolutely agree. This guy, that's exactly what I would say when he eats that meal. Like, he was just... We'll get into that another time, but yeah, thank you, EA, on YouTube for that. Agreeing with me for once.
Wait, EA didn't agree with you.
Yeah, he didn't quite agree there.
Well, I'm gonna interpret it that he agreed with me.
Let's
just move on. It's fine.
Jeffrey, is the times. These are the times. You have to let him have his. Yeah.
All right, fine. All right, whatever. Anywho, so we'll go straight into our first chapter read-through, and this is The Wounded. Now, we start off from the perspective of our boy, our favorite domestic abuser, Lord
Don't forget, regicidal maniac.
Yes, regicidal maniac, sister beater, and
everything is his fault. In fact, everything everything is West's fault, actually.
And an incel. We can't forget that. Okay, so he was sleeping. He's in the hospital wing, and he's panicked because he doesn't really know what's going on. He can't really see too well. I guess he has all these bandages around him. He's in a lot of pain. He hears the occasional whimper, like some guy saying he can't see either. And so he tried to bring up his left hand to eye level so he could see, but he could see that, but he can't really see anything else because just moving the left hand was hard enough, all the pain that he was feeling apparently. And then, when the guy kept saying, I can't see, help, the fucking wind, bloody wind, whatever. And we're talking, when he says the bloody wind, when people are going to mention the wind going forward in these chapters, they're talking about Baez's vortex of doom with the seed. So Wes gets, he's getting annoyed with this guy because he's in a lot of pain, and he, no one wants to hear somebody, cry the entire night. So he tries to tell him to, fucking shut up. But all that came out was and and so then
I find that really interesting, because surely somebody who's in pain should be the one that is the most sympathetic to others that are in pain. I mean, this guy's probably going through the same thing that West is.
Yeah,
well,
he has nothing but contempt for him.
Oh, you know what? Honestly, I get it. Because if everyone's suffering, why aren't you quiet like the rest of us?
Yeah. Also, I will say in this book, it's very poignant because, as Glockta famously likes to say, and others eventually say as well, pain doesn't make you feel sympathy, really.
Yeah.
It just makes you feel sorry for yourself.
Yeah, that's it. You worry about yourself first and foremost. Um, you want to keep talking about that, George?
No,
Okay.
all good.
Okay.
We won this one, Jeffrey.
So we then someone comes over to him and like calms him down, puts a hand on his chest and is like, "Be still." It's a woman's voice, and he's like, "Huh, interesting, but okay." But then she gives him something to drink, like some water. He drinks a little bit too eagerly and slaps it all over his face and then his neck. And he asks her what happened, tells her, she was, you're wounded. He's like, I know that. I meant the city, like the wind. And she's like, I don't think anybody knows. And so then Wes is at this point, the last thing he remembers was like, the rubble and everything falling on top of him. So he doesn't even know if they won. He asks her if they won. She's like, yeah, I mean, the Gurkish were driven out, but there's a lot of wounded and a lot of dead. So drink some more water. He asked her, who is she this time? And she is Aris Dan Caspa. Wait a minute. This is... Guys.
Yeah, it's Eris. This is that girl from the Blade itself, who we she talked to, I think, Giselle, right? And she's all like, oh yes, whoa. Oh, yep. She's like some beauty, and she has a whole bunch of money because of her relatives and dying and all that. She's also Caspa's cousin, who Caspa's dead now, of course, unfortunately. But Eris, I think it's really sweet that Eris is here, like helping out. Like she doesn't sound all dainty. She's not trying to, win over a boy so she can continue her family name. She's just like here helping people.
Yeah. So this is Lieutenant Dan Caspa's cousin, right? Lieutenant, was it Lieutenant?
Yeah.
It was Lieutenant. If you will, and also if you remember, besides her being dainty and stuff and rich, Jallenhorn had the hots for her. If we remember that. Yeah, she's rich. Oh God,
so
rich.
I love how West is like that. West is just like, everybody said you were beautiful and rich, very rich.
Very rich.
And it's like, and then the thought that he might not be wanting to say this comes into his head, but he didn't really care.
Yeah,
I fucking love that.
Yeah, and
I don't know if anybody else has been in that kind of state of, like, when you're wounded or if you're coming out of a daze and you're not really aware of what you're saying. You will just say whatever the first thing comes to your head.
Yeah. If you ever got cracked in the head, that's exactly what happens. So, she's just there taking care of the wounded, and then Wes kind of just like falls asleep. And then it was a bit of a break, and we come back to Wes' perspective. And he wakes up and he looks and he sees Artie. Hello, bro. This is the first time they're seeing each other since the
incident.
Since the incident, let's just say. And then he asked her, "Is he dreaming?" And then she, digs her nails into his arm. He's like, "Never mind, painful dream. It's real." So she looks. To West's perspective, she looks good. Just a thoughtful frown, no blood on her face, nothing like that. And then he asks her how bad is it, I guess, his injuries. She tells him that, nothing too serious. It's a broken arm, a few broken ribs, and a badly bruised leg, and maybe some cuts on the face that might leave a scar, but that's fine. But, Artie got all the looks in the family anyway, and the brains as well. We can't forget about that.
Both are true, by the way.
Yep, very, very true.
Wes got the blind courage, apparently.
Yeah, blind luck. And she makes a little joke that she's used the looks and the brains to make the towering success of her life that he can see before him. The kind of achievement that a Lord Marshal of the Union can only dream of. And then, he tells her to stop because it hurts. He's laughing. And then she tells him, no less than you deserve. And so we like, okay, that's right. And so he stops laughing, and then struggles to get it out, but he's like, Artie, can you forgive me? That's basically what he says. Then she tells him that she already did. The first time she heard that he was dead, 1 week after Ladislaw's unfortunate battle. And then, but she was trying to smile, but she could, there's still like that anger deep inside, which obviously makes sense. You're gonna be you're gonna have conflicted feelings. I imagine if you try and forgive your brother for beating you, but you hear that he died.
And now he's alive, and now you got to figure out how to deal with that emotion.
Yeah.
But
she does say that it's good that he's not, dead. But then we hear a little bit of commotion, and then somebody's like squealing, like, the king has come again. The king is like, what the fuck is going on? And so then,
Zal enters.
Yeah, Wes is trying to see, can't really see, but he hears a voice. He hears a strangely familiar but strangely different voice. That says, "Are they treating you well?" "Yes, sir." "Is there anything you need?" "A kiss from a good woman?" "Ha! I would love to oblige you, but I'm fear I'm only a king. We're a great deal more common than good women." But about.
And it's like, I love how it points out that this is just such a bad joke, but everybody's like, because that's what you need, isn't it? When you're feeling down, you're down in the dumps, or in this case,
a very corny joke.
Wounded. You need a corny joke every now and again to get your spirits up.
Yeah. And but the guy asks for maybe another blanket, and then it gets cold down there at night, and then Giselle's like, of course, and he looks, he jerks his thumb, and Lord Hoff is actually at a respectful distance, and he tells Lord Hoff, another blanket for every man here, and Lord Hoff, who West did he describes him as that fearsome scourge of the audience chamber, humbly nodded his head like a meek child.
He's probably afraid of getting a goblet in the head, like
like that other
He's
dude.
been cowed.
Yeah.
But then we have everybody, he's the way Giselle's walking around, he actually is like full on, everyone's like, "Oh my god, the king." He's like a warm presence wherever he goes, and he's greeting everybody. And one of the people are like, "A cheer for the king." And he's like, no, the cheering should be for you, my brave friends, who've made all the sacrifices in my name. I owe you everything. It's only with your help that the Gurkish were defeated. Only with your help that the Union was saved. I do not forget a debt. That I promise you. Which is very sweet. It's, if you're a soldier and you're fighting for a king, and the king comes down there and says these things, I feel like it's pretty significant.
That's the entire reason why these guys have signed up in the first place. A lot of these people, you've got to bear in mind, like, we only ever really see like the nobility side of the army. We never really see the common soldier's perspective.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So to see this from this angle and see that they all really do appreciate it, and the fact that Giselle has again changed this much to the point where he's this, like you said, Harrison, like this warming presence, this sort of beacon of hope for them. It's so nice, isn't it?
Yeah, and Wes is just like, who is this dude?
Yeah, it's completely different. And then he sees West, and he's like, "Call him West." Yo, my man. He's like,
I love that callback.
He's like, "I can honestly say I've never been so happy to see you." And then he sees Artie, and he's like, "Artie, I hope you are well." She's like, "Yes." Mm-hmm. And then Lord Hoff is like, he's looking at West, and then he looks at Artie, then he looks at the king, and he's like, "Your Majesty, we should go."
Mm-hmm. And then, but Giselle kind of, he just puts up one hand, doesn't even say anything, so just silence. And then he tells West that he hopes that soon West will be on the closed council, that he needs a friendly face there and good advice. And
he's just
like,
lonely.
And he's like, "You always were a mine of good advice. I never did thank you for it. Well, I can thank you now." And West is like, Giselle, your man is like, yes, no, always Giselle to you. Always Giselle. You're gonna have a room in the palace. You're gonna have the royal surgeon. Everything possible. See to that, Hoff. And Lord Chamberlain's like, "Yes, of course. Everything will be arranged."
Well, it's interesting to think as well. Isn't the last time that West and Giselle were together, West was threatening him?
I think so. Actually, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that's it's a very similar situation between the situation that West has with Ardy and with Giselle. Like, so much has changed that none of that. Well, I say none of it really matters anymore. But they've been through so much, that all three of them, that they can all kind of start to move past it.
Yeah. Yeah. Very true. Very true.
This is Joe setting us up for a massive disappointment.
Yeah.
Well, we'll get to that.
Yeah. We'll get to it.
What a disappointment, but we'll get.
We'll say. And then Giselle tells him that he's glad he's well, that he cannot afford to lose him. Then he nods to him, to Artie, then turns and keeps working the crowd. And then Wes is like, "What the fuck? Responsibility seems to have improved him." And then they make a joke about like, how long it's gonna last? Maybe it could stick, but I've always been an optimist. So, and then Artie says, "Yeah, that's good. That one of us can be an optimist," which is like, okay, interesting. And then a little bit of a break. We hear Marshall West. Well, someone say Marshall West is Jallenhorn. He's here to see Lord Marshall West. Doing great. How you doing? He's like, the West is getting better every day. He asks him, how's his army? And Jallenhorn says he's fumbling on without you. Croy is holding things together. He's not such a bad sort once you get used to him. And then but there is still like chaotic. Like whole companies are missing. Some makeshift units are still chasing like the Gurkish stragglers. They're not gonna have like official numbers for a while, or if they'll ever get them. No one did well, but the 9th Regiment were the ones fighting at the western end of the Agrion. They took the worst of it. As you know, we are talking about a little nuclear...
Vortex of Doom.
The Vortex of Doom.
Is that just what we're calling it now, the Vortex of Doom?
Officially.
Come up with other names. Go for it. But, no one knew what it was, but Jallenhorn goes and says... excuse me. Jallenhorn does say that no one knows, but the rumor is that Baez was involved somehow. Half the Agrion is in ruins, and they barely started shifting the rubble. Apparently, it's just the wreckage is devastating.
A long process.
Yep, and there's a disease now. There's a new sickness, and it's like some die in a day, some right before your eyes, some take longer. They wither to the skin and bone. They have halls full of them. Just people just withering away. It's
we know, Jeff.
They're withering.
They're withering.
It's like
go ahead.
It's like if somebody was going through chemotherapy at 100 speed, and it was also the chemo killing them at the same time.
Well, a lot of times it is the yeah. Ugh. Yeah.
And again, it's also like I've brought this up before, and radiation, like I've said before, is literally the radiation poisoning will completely degrade your body to the point where you're basically just a fucking husk. And very, very few people, once they've had a high enough dose of it, and there's never really confirmed because nobody really knows about radiation at this point. And I would love to see like a modern day first law, like if Joe comes out with the next trilogy. And it's all in the modern day, and they're like, "Oh yeah, this magic stuff." So it's just like radiation. That would be an interesting way.
Uranium is from the other side.
Exactly, radiation from the other side.
Mm-hmm.
So Jallenhorn is, just kind of, you let him know what everything that's going on, and he's like, "Well, I gotta get going here. I would love to see you back playing cards and all that." And Wes is like, keep out of trouble, and. As Wes is now up in the palace, just as Giselle said that they would be. So he's looking out at the gardens, and they're already trying to clean it up, but it's still a massive mess. And he's just kind of reflecting over everything he has been through, all he's survived. England and the duel, and Burr and Caspa and Cathil and Three Trees, all dead now, and. He had murdered the heir to the throne, and now no one cares. And at the end of his big thought, he's like, busy year," which is such a common man's thought.
I really think that's really, really, really interesting that I've always thought this, that sometimes some of the things that you worry about in life the most are the things that aren't really worth worrying about. I know this isn't, most people don't go around murdering princes, but a lot of the time the things that people obsess about aren't the things that are going to ruin your life. And I think that's just like a tiny little thread that Joe kind of hits on there.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. That's exactly how it goes. And then Artie's coming in, and she's, hey, you shouldn't be up. And it seems like they're you can tell by the disposition that they're getting used to each other again, and they're not quite as standoffish. And he's like, don't worry, I'm getting stronger every day. And she'll be like, oh yes, in a few weeks' time you'll be as strong as a little girl to get back to bed. We're not taking any good chances, any chances at all. I mean, you're all I have. I'm sorry to say, unless you count the other invalid, my good friend Sandan Glockta. And Wes is like, that worked out.
Yeah.
In a way.
It's interesting to think that Wes didn't really expect when he went to Glockter's room all drunk and despairing with his own failure that he was actually going to get Lector to do anything nice for RD.
Yeah, it was kind of just like
a last-ditch attempt.
Right.
That was one of the more heartwarming moments, though, of the book, when Glockta kind of got over his rage.
Yes.
Oh, absolutely.
And she's like, yeah, he's utterly loathsome, but at the same time, I find that I've strangely warmed to him. And Wes is like, he used to be loathsome in an entirely different way, so that's interesting. And then he suddenly feels like a wave of sickness, like getting cramps, and he gets all tired and stuff. And Artie's like, oh, are you okay? And he's like, oh yeah, I've had these weird sick spells. I'm sure it's nothing. And then she's like, call him. And there's hair wedged between his fingers, a lot of hair, his own. And he's like looking at it like, I know it's been thinning for years, but really this is too much.
I love how he makes that joke as well. It's so heartbreaking.
And Artie's like, she's not laughing. She's just staring at his hands.
In horror, yeah. Yeah.
And then that's the end of the chapter.
Is apparently succumbing to this sickness that's going around.
Yup. We'll see what happens there.
But that really fucking hits you, doesn't it? Like, God damn.
Yeah. It's like, son of a bitch. West, he survived the battle. He, is making amends with his sister. And then what? What? This happens?
But sorry, Jeff. It kind of ties into what I was saying earlier. It was like, he never thinks about the fact that he could be afflicted with this sickness. Gyllenhaal talks about it, but he never goes, oh, I was close to the vortex of doom. So, like, maybe I could be affected by this. But it's like the way that people really think about these things in real life. Right. I mean, everybody can relate to this back with COVID. Everybody was like, oh, no, it's not going to be me. I can't be sick with COVID, it's because it's me.
Yeah.
But anybody could have gotten it.
Mm-hmm.
And anybody could have been killed by it. And it's the same with any kind of major disease. You never see these things coming. And I think the human brain kind of filters these things out, because if you were constantly worrying about these things all the time, you just fucking go mad.
Mm-hmm. Yep. No, I agree.
And, we know that Joe has this background in psychology, so this is just such an interesting... And again, this is another thing that could be called a throwaway moment, but it isn't.
Yeah. It was good.
Look at you, George. Good job. I like that one. That was good. Well, how would you guys rate the chapter?
Harrison?
I think I'm going to rate this chapter a 5 out of 9. It's fairly short. We catch up with Wes, and it's really nice to see him and Artie kind of getting along again, and it's nice to see, kind of just getting caught up, seeing it through Wes' eyes and everything. But it's also like, other than the stuff that you pointed out, George, that's pretty much all there is in the chapter. So I think that's a fair score for me.
It's because Harrison hates West. That's why.
Oh my god.
I think I'll just give it a 1 higher. I'll give it a 6.
I was gonna give it a 6 too.
And for everything that you said, Harrison, like, it is very, very short. It's very. You only ever really. It's mostly West's inner monologue, and we don't really get a lot of West's inner monologue, but yeah. It's just sad, isn't it?
It's just a sad. It's the character. Character that we've been with since the start. A lot of POVs, a lot of twists and turns. Like, he was our witness. I guess he was the vehicle that we used to see, like, the death of Vladislav, that crazy ass battle. Just a bunch of stuff. And let's just say it's not looking good. All right, this is just say. But a very short chapter. 6 out of 9 for me, just out of the the fondness out of my heart for Lord Marshal West, not for his actions at the end of the first book, though.
Just to clarify,
if anybody was wondering, we do not condone.
We at Circle the World podcast condemn all aspects of domestic violence.
In fact, we are adamantly against it.
Now, international violence, we totally support it. I'm just kidding.
Damn it, Jeffrey. We almost got through that with an actual PC answer.
Couldn't help it. All right. So let's move on to our next segment, which is our best meme of the week. Georgie boy, take it away, please.
It turns out the meme that we made last week was really, really popular. So it's us this week. It's us. We did it. We are the meme of the week. Well done, Harrison. You did it. It's the happy Oppenheimer Baez at the end of the last argument of Kings when he's just really fucking happy. And but the thing that I really want to talk about is this sort of spoiler-heavy, cursed ending to the first law that somebody commented under it, which was, what a wholesome ending to an otherwise dark trilogy. Baez, the fatherly figure in his wizard's robes, finally saves the world from Khalul and his eaters. Jazal overcomes his narcissism and becomes a doctor, marrying the love of his life, Ardi. Baez heals Glocta, who completely goes on to marry Shiloh Vatari and adopt her children. Logan marries Pharaoh and retires to the country, living as a farmer. No more bloody nine after Baez killed the demon in his soul. Turns out Khalul cursed him. West goes on to become a Lord Marshal under King Guslav, who's healthy as ever. Such a beautiful ending. I love Baez. And that's from user Terry Bandy Merry Fan on Reddit, which is
who should be a writer.
Brilliant. Should be a writer. You should just write fan fiction for the first law if you're listening.
Just do it.
That's absolutely brilliant. So thank you very much for that.
We will promote it.
Yeah, we'll definitely promote that. Promote the shit out of it.
Absolutely. All right, let's move on to our second and final chapter read-through. So this is Patriotic Duties, and we are in the perspective of Glocta in his new role as the Arch-Lector. And he's in the White Chamber, which is for the Closed Council. Whoever's alive and available is sitting down, and as he sits down, King Giselle is staring at Glocta, and he's like, "Remarkable that you are confirmed already in your position." And then Baez cuts in. He's like, "Such things can happen quickly when there is the will, Your Majesty." And then Hoff comes in, and he's like, "After all," and he just like looks like across the table. He's like, "Our numbers are most sadly reduced." So let's just do a little quick recount of who's missing. So Marshal Varuz is missing, presumed dead, because he was on the Tower Chains overseeing the defense. So we know what happened to the Tower Chains.
Yeah, Baez murdered him.
Baez murdered him. High Justice Morovia is currently decorating the ceiling of his office.
Yeah, because Salt murdered him.
Salt or sulfur, somebody murdered him. I don't know. Lord Valdis of the Knights Herald was on the southern gate when the Gurkish, exploded their powder. Boom, boom. Who else? Oh, Lord Admiral Reutzer is absent, wounded at sea by a cutlass to the guts, not expected to survive. So, yeah. Then Lord Chancellor Halleck asks if Marshal West cannot be with us. General Croy is there, and he says that he regrets that he cannot. He has asked me to take his place and speak for the army. And this little description here is General Croy seemed to pinch off each word with his teeth, as in, I guess he doesn't really want to talk. He doesn't want to be there. He's feeling, some kind of way.
I mean, Croy has never been like a speaker, has he? He's always been a man of action,
right.
In the traditional sense, hasn't he?
Yeah, yep. You're right.
So it doesn't really make sense. If Polder was here,
he'd probably be like, "Whoa,
we shall drive the Gurkish dogs back into the sea and eat their bones and drink their blood."
Yeah, you're right.
But let me be the first to congratulate your Majesty on your great victory.
Yeah. And Halleck, he asks him, well, how is the Marshal? And Croy simply just says wounded. But then Giselle comes in, he goes, and further afflicted by the wasting illness that has recently swept the Agrion. And he's just staring at Baez, and Baez just goes, regrettable. Without showing the slightest sign of regret. And it's like, I can imagine him just like looking at his fingers like, oh yeah, regrettable. Yeah.
I do like how, like, just like with the eaters at the end here, like, Giselle is not like, oh, it's this, I'm just gonna ignore the facts of magic. He like is fully where it comes from. He may not think about it and wonder about it, but like Glocta, they're both like, we know that this is a thing and we know where it's coming from.
And don't forget, Giselle, went with him to the journey to, the quest across
House of the Maker.
No, not even the House of the Maker.
He told the whole story about Ulcus, didn't he?
Yeah, Ulcus.
Yeah.
He knew about Ulcus and the seed.
Yeah.
So, and then Hoff says that the doctors, the physicians are utterly baffled, and Giselle goes, "Few survive," and he's just glaring a hole right into fucking Baez. And so then, okay, so like, all right, let's get to business. How was the campaign? Croy says that the Gurkish army is completely routed. We've pursued them towards Keln, where some have managed to flee on the remnant of their fleet, but Du Corso's ships soon put an end to that. The Gurkish invasion is over. Victory is theirs. Excellent. Congratulations. We owe
which is, and it's a pretty significant thing, because we know that they had at least 50,000 men there, and presumably not very many got away because of the sea situation. So that's a significant blow to the Gurkish. Like I know a lot of their auxiliaries or whatever, but like they sent their entire army over with pretty high confidence, and like it's not just been like oh they've been routed, but most of the army got away back to the mainland. No, like they're almost the entire army is destroyed. So it's pretty significant.
We can kind of assume that the leadership has been completely destroyed as well. I mean, we don't really know what happens to General. Is it Maltzke? It is Maltzke, isn't it?
Yeah.
But we know that Mamoon and all of the 100 Words who were, really in charge, they've all been completely fucking obliterated.
Yeah.
So what do you do when you're a soldier and you've been sent to a foreign land and suddenly everybody that was in charge is just dead? Like, that's just sad.
Yeah.
Swipe them back into the sea.
Yeah, so they congratulate him, but Croy goes, the congratulations belong to Marshal West, who gave the orders, and to Polder and others who gave their lives carrying them out. I was no more than an observer. And he's not feeling good.
I love Croy.
Yeah, loving him now. Before we were like, this guy's annoying, but now we're like, oh, like this guy. But Hoff is like, you played your part, and given the unfortunate absence of Ruse, we might soon wish to give you a promotion. And Giselle kind of is just like, because right now he's not in a good mood.
Still staring at Baez.
Yeah.
I can imagine in an adaptation, he's just literally this entire speech, this whole conversation is going on. And Giselle is just constantly staring at Baez like, what the fuck, man?
Yep. And then he, Croy's like, I'm honored to serve in whatever capacity, but we need to talk about the prisoners. It's a more urgent matter. There's thousands of them and no food, blah, blah, blah. So there was like, oh shit. So there's no food for our own soldiers, though, our own citizens or our own wounded. So can we ransom any men of quality to the emperor? And then, some people said there were precious few men of quality among their entire army. So there are no value. So Baez goes, it says, if they have no value to the emperor, they are certainly no value to us. Let them starve. And then Croy goes, we are talking about thousands of lives here. And then Baez just kind of glares at him and he goes, I know what we are talking of, General. Enemies and invaders. But then Giselle comes in and says, we can find a way, of course, right? Can't we just ship them back to Kanta? Is it Kanta or is it Kant? Like
Kanta.
Kanta's the continent.
Kanta's the continent, yeah. It would be shameful, like, for our victory if, fucking we're out here just letting motherfuckers starve.
Ironically, he does the proper king thing and is showing mercy, which is what Baez even spoken about.
Well, you might even say valor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But was that like a kind of like joke, George?
What?
No.
No, okay. I thought I didn't know if you had like a hidden meeting with that. Sorry.
I think of one now, but no, I don't think I am.
Okay.
But he is right though. Like, victory doesn't really mean much if you're no better than your enemies.
Mm-hmm.
The Gurkish are threatening to, well, at least the Gurkish leadership was threatening to kill everyone in Adwa, and now you're going to kill all of those soldiers who probably didn't even want to be there in the first place.
Yep. But Baez, to play devil's advocate here, Baez does make a point where he says a prisoner fed is a citizen that has to go hungry. That's the terrible arithmetic of power. It's a difficult decision, but those are the only kind of decisions we have in this room. Which is, there is an element of truth to it, I guess. I don't know.
Yes.
But then he asks, he's like, well, what is your opinion, Arch Lector? And we know who opinion he's gonna have on the Gurkish. He's like, I've never been a great admirer. Let them starve.
And it really shows immediately, like, Baez is starting to get back into control again. Obviously, he already had Giselle there as the king, but now he has Lector as his kind of main puppet. He's going to just say whatever he wants him to say. And everybody's already scared of Lector because, well, just look at him.
Yeah. Famous Inquisitor. Giselle settled further into his throne with an even grimmer frown. So now that's, they talk, they got that out of the way. Now we got to talk about the clearing of the ruins and the rebuilding of the damage caused by. His eyes shifted nervously sideways to Baez. Gurkish aggression. It's like they all know it's Baez.
But it's funny because the actual damage caused by the Gurkish probably isn't that much. I mean, they were firing. I say firing. They were launching projectiles into the city for a good couple of months. So they probably burned down a good portion of the city.
And
but the actual
gate.
Agrion itself has completely been destroyed by Baez.
Right. But
including many of its major landmarks.
Can you hear me, George?
Yeah, man. I'm just interrupting you.
Oh, okay. Oh, snaps. Yes, but they did blow up the southern gate. Don't forget that. That's what I was trying to say to you.
Yeah.
Okay. Anywho, Harrison, do you want to say anything before I continue?
No. You guys are. I'm good right now.
Okay, so they're they have to rebuild, but the cost it's going to be so expensive, millions of marks and all that. So Glocta starts off by saying we look to the nobles, curtailment of the powers of the open council, harsh taxes on those who did not provide material support during the war, sweeping reforms, lands returned to the crown, levies on inheritance. The Lord Governors should be brought back into the fold as well. Scald and Mead. They have long enjoyed too much independence. Somebody says Meade can hardly be blamed. His province is a wreck. And then Baez says this is not a question of blame. This is a question of control. I like that when Baez says this is not a question of blame. Glockta goes, no, indeed. We all know where that lies.
Oh! Yeah.
And then Baez says it's a question of control. Victory has given us the opportunity for reform. We need to centralize. We need to make sure that Westport, we bring them into the fold because they kept playing us against off the Gurkish. We should probably put the Inquisition in their city, a foothold in Styria. And then Baez goes, we must rebuild better and more glorious than ever before. And everyone's like, yeah, golden age. Yeah. And then
era of prosperity.
Yeah. And then Giselle comes in and he goes, an age of unity and opportunity for all. And it's like, bring, like crickets. Like everyone, no one just is like, yes, opportunities.
Yeah, for all.
Ha. And then
I do love the fact that Joe is setting this up for no spoilers, but in the next trilogy after the standalones, I've seen a couple of people say that this is just comes out of nowhere, but just in this last 3 paragraphs, this is all set up.
What is?
Well, some kind of big change,
Oh. I gotcha.
Yeah,
I was a little distracted. I was like, what?
It definitely does set things up.
Oh yeah, for sure. Then Halleck says, maybe heavier taxes on the merchant guilds and the banks as well. That can give us a lot of, that's a shitload of money right there. And then Baez, offhandedly, he's like, no, not the guilds or the banks. Free operation of those noble institutions provides wealth and security to all. The future of the nation lies in commerce. And Halleck is like, of course, you are right. I am.
Which is hilarious on multiple levels because all it does is make me hate capitalism. Because that's really what they always say. They're always like, no, we can't touch the banks or the corporations. We need to have free market in order to truly have a good economy.
I will disagree with you here. That is not capitalism. That's cronyism.
It's actually mercantilism.
There you go. See, the free market capitalism. It's been a little hamstrung. All right, we're all capitalists here. All right, calm down, commie.
But if you actually look into, like, say, the causes of the French Revolution, no spoilers or anything, but mercantilism is a really big cause of this. This kind of feeling that economies and money in general is a way to wage war in a way. So if we're richer than the enemy, then we're better off.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's almost like there's going to be a hint of things to come for sure.
Almost.
Then Baez continues on. He's like, perhaps the banks will be willing to extend a loan to the crown, however. And then Glockta, without hesitating, he's like, an excellent idea. The banking house of Valentinbalk are a trustworthy and long-founded institution. They were of profound value during my attempts to defend Dagosca. I am sure we can count on their help again. In the meantime, the lands, assets, and titles of the trader Lord Brock have been requisitioned by the crown. Their sale will raise a considerable sum. And Baez is like smiling like, yes, I got my boy.
And obviously now we know Baez is in control of most of these assets.
Yeah. Yep. We know he's in control of Valentinbalk. I don't know if he's in control of other institutions, but if he probably has a hand in them, So then, what about the man himself, Lord Brock? Somebody asked Glockta, and he says that it appears that he fled the nation with the last of the Gurkish, that he is their guest or puppet. It's unfortunate, Baez says, that he may continue to be a focus for discontent, but they do have two of his children under lock and key in the House of Questions. His daughter and one of the sons. An exchange might be possible, and Lord Chamberlain Hoff goes, Brock? He's not going to swap his... he wouldn't. No, absolutely not. He wouldn't do it. And then Glockta goes, okay, well then perhaps a demonstration of intent. A clear message that treason will not and never be tolerated. And Baez goes, yeah, never a bad message to send. So I don't know who says this in the audiobook, who's next, but a public declaration of Brock's guilt, is that Glocta?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure
Yeah, I
that
think
is
so.
Gloctor, but a
Okay,
public
so
declaration of
declaration
Brock's guilt
guilt,
and then his
then
responsibility for the ruin of the city of Adua.
right, okay, accompanied by a pair
And
of
then,
hangings.
and then in his inner monologue, he's like, a shame for them to have been born to such an ambitious father, but everyone loves a public killing.
Yeah, but then, as Glock is saying, does anyone have a preference for a day? Like, what day do we like? Do we like a Wednesday? Do we like a hanging Thursday? But then Giselle interrupts and says there will be no hangings, and he's staring right at Baez. And then Hoff kind of is like, Your Majesty, but you can't allow. And then Giselle's like, there's been enough bloodshed, far more than enough. Release Lord Brock's children. Everyone's like, ooh. And then he tells them, allow them to join their father or remain in the Union as private citizens, whatever they desire. Baez is glaring back. And then, but Giselle's like, the war is over. We won. I would rather try to heal wounds than deepen them. Sometimes mercy buys you more than ruthlessness. And then Glock goes, sometimes, but yeah, okay. And then
And I'm just gonna say, Giselle, fuck me, Giselle. Well done, Giselle. You're making the right, even no matter the outcome. That is the ethical and the correct decision. Nobody should ever pay for
the crimes of somebody
sin.
else.
Yeah, for the crimes of somebody else, even if they are your family or your direct family.
Right. You said you were about to say the sins of the father, right?
Exactly. And you know, collective punishment is, like you say, it's a communist thing, right?
Yeah, commie.
I mean, the only country on earth right now that practices collective punishment is North Korea.
Yeah. Yeah, China doesn't even do it anymore, right?
No. So there's literally no fucking excuse.
Yeah,
collective punishment. To your guys' point as well, I absolutely agree. It is the correct thing to do at this point. And you know, with everything that's been going on too, he actually, I'm not sure if you guys caught this, but Giselle says what Baez says. Like he's very cleverly says, you know, Baez tells him sometimes mercy is, you know, more. He said that one time to him, I think inside before they hanged.
Exactly.
So he's using his own words against him, which is clever and it's good. I really like how, you know, Joe writes that, you know, Giselle has, you know, learned and gotten better, and he's going to put his foot down. And, you know, despite whatever consequences there may be, there's no predicting what might have happened. You know, that's just Joe being the classic cynic later on here. But for the most part, you know, it is the right thing. So.
Mm-hmm. I mean, you can. That's the thing, isn't it? You can try and predict what will happen and try and prevent other things from kind of impeding your rule, but at the end of the day, you're going to lose favor if you act like this.
Yeah.
I imagine if there had been hangings like this, this kind of revolution that's coming up would happen a lot sooner.
So basically, Giselle's like, is that it? Are we done? Because I got important shit to do. I got to help with the rubble, visit people in the hospital. You know, and Hoff is like, your compassion is commendable. And Giselle kind of like looks him up and down, goes, and just walks away. So everyone's getting up, everyone's about to leave. And then Hoff kind of comes up to Glocta and is like, hey, we have a small problem. And Glocta's like, okay, what is it? And then he kind of looks around. He's like, so we have an issue with our absent Lord Marshal's sister. And Glocta's like, RD West, what about it? And then Hoff says, I have it on good authority that she finds herself in a delicate condition. And Glocta's like, okay, fuck, you are pretty well informed about the lady's personal business. And Hoff is like, it's my duty to do so, especially when you consider who the father might be. And Glocta's like, and that is, and then Hoff is like, who else but the fucking king? You know, it was well known that they were in the liaison, to put it delicately,
so to speak.
Yeah, and now when the king's own claim to the throne is not of necessarily the purest, and then he gets there's a bastard child, and there's so many so many enemies on the open council. So it's a threat to the state, And then Glock is like, oh yeah, it is. So Hoff is like, listen, I know that you know the lady and her family, so I totally understand if you would rather not do this, I can do this myself. And then Glock to kind of go like, he's like, hey, are you implying that I don't have this ruthlessness for the murder of a pregnant woman, Lord Chamberlain? And Hoff is like, shut the fuck up, man. But no, you can do any duty. I believe it. And then he's like, good. So then you can rest easy. I will deal with this matter.
I absolutely love the way that like Pacey says it and the way the line is stated. It's the same way that Galacta always says like ruthless things like, "Oh yes, racism is perfect. I love racism." Like he's being sarcastic at the same time as being serious. It's it's just such a Galacta thing to say.
Yeah, and I love how it says his voice bounced from the hard white ceiling, so he's not even being subtle about it. He's literally just saying out loud. So like Hoff has come up to him and he's talking to him in these hushed whispers, like, "Oh yeah, this is happening," and blah 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 blah. And Glock is just like, "Well, I'm gonna fucking sort it."
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I think that's just I love the fact that Glock has come into his confidence here because he spent the last 3 books being hushed and quiet and kind of serving somebody else. And now that he's kind of come into his own power, he can kind of exercise it a bit. And I do love this sort of very, very subtle showing of that.
Yeah. So, bit of a break. It's Glocta. He's in front of the house. Artie's house. He puts his hand in his pocket, grips the cold metal, and he's oh man, he is not feeling good about this, and like internally, he's like, it's all fucking because of Giselle Dan Luther couldn't keep it in his goddamn pants. I gotta murder my fucking
but love will be love. Hey,
yeah. So. He's just walking. He's looking at himself in like I guess there's like a mirror. Oh, because he knocks on the door. The maid lets him in, and he's like, I bet the maid is a snitch to Lord Hoff. And then
I wonder what happens to that maid. By the way, I bet that maid doesn't last very long.
No, I bet so. I bet not. I think there's actually something does happen to her. I think.
Straight to the workhouse.
To the forge in England.
Yeah.
So, he walks in, he's trying to, his mind is racing. The man is he's fucked up. And then Artie comes in the doorway and she's like, "Your Eminence, white suits you. Hello." And then he goes, "You don't think it makes the my face look all the more ghoulish or whatever?" She's like, "No, it makes it matches it perfectly." And so then, the little bit of a banter about, will you take me on another tour of sewers, death, and torture? And he's like, no, not going to be able to do that, whatever. And then she asks, okay, well, I trust that you're doing okay. He's like, yep, with the Gurkish, I have so much to do. How is your brother? I've been meaning to visit him, but... and then she tells him... Ironically, he is always sick now. Every time that she visits, he's thinner. One of his teeth fell out while she was with him. It just came out while he was trying to eat, and he nearly choked on it. What can anybody do? And Glocta is truly sorry to hear it, but he's sure that she's a big help to him. And he asked her, "How are you?"
I love that little aside where he's like, "But it changes nothing."
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also, I like that he says this to her, like, "I'm sure you're a big help to him." Because he knows that that's what she wants to be, is a help.
Yeah, absolutely. She wants to be she wants to be matter, right?
Yeah, she wants to matter. She wants to be useful. She wants to be not just loved by somebody. She wants to be,
needed.
A part of something, needed. Yes, and so it just shows that he knows her. So he, he's complimenting her. It's like that means probably more to her than when compared to. What other people would probably say, like, "Oh, that's very nice of you," like.
Yeah.
And it's so tragic that after all this time of Artie feeling useless and just drinking every day and just reading these shitty books, that she finally has something to live for, and it's been taken away so quickly.
Yeah. Bleeding.
So yeah, he asked her, how are you doing? And she goes, better than most, I guess. Will you take some wine? And he's like, no, but don't let me stop you. And then she held the bottle and then put it down. She's like, I've been trying to drink less lately. And then he says to her that he always felt that she should. And so then he just basically straight up says, you feel sick in the morning then? And she's like, And he's like, I am the Arch Lector. I'm supposed to know everything. And then she is just, then her head, she's just, she's just holding back tears. She's just sad. She just, she believes that she made a mess of things, just like her brother said she would. And just like Glockta said she would. And that he's got to be disappointed. And then Glockta's like, no. It's, no one gets what they deserve. He's been, no, he's not disappointed at all. And he starts to move closer to her. And then he tells her that, look, I've always had a great liking and respect for your brother. I've developed a great liking and respect for you. Or as close as, those kind of feelings that like a man like myself can have. But this is difficult. I am so sorry. And she goes, for what? And then he tells himself like now. And then
before you go into this, Jeff, I love the fact that this is set up so that we think that Glockta is gonna murder her.
Yeah. Well, of course. Yeah, actually, everyone's read this, so they know. Duh.
Yeah, I know, but I just want to point out this is so well written. It's so fucking well written.
It is. It's
and Jeff, I never know where you're gonna go with these things, so I've got to interject when I can.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So Glockta lurches forward, takes his hand out of his pocket, and has a big ass ring, and they're both frozen. And he's like, I have to ask you to marry me. She goes, what? And he's like, look, I know. I'm as disgusted as you are, but I'm not stupid enough to think that you might ever come to love like a man like me or think of me with anything warmer than pity. It's just it's necessity. You can't flinch from it because of what I am. They know that you are carrying the king's child. She goes, they? Yes, they. The child is a threat to them. You are a threat to them. This way, he can protect her. He can give the child legitimacy. It must be their child, now and forever. There are many things he can give her: safety, security, respect. You will have the best of everything, high place in society, all that jazz. People will whisper behind your back, of course, but they will whisper of your beauty, your wit, and your surpassing virtue. He will see to it. And then she goes, it's not even the first child that she had. She was pregnant, and then her father threw her down the stairs, and she lost the baby. So she didn't.
And that's just awful, isn't it? I mean,
that is really bad. You go ahead, Jeff. We'll just talk for a second.
The fact that Ardy has been through all this and she's expecting to go through all this again. It's just it's horrifying. It's absolutely horrifying. And the fact that Glockta then kind of comes here and steps up, and it reminds me of this meme that the Spaceman makes about a year and a half ago, and it's like Glockta is the ultimate stepdad. I might not be the dad, but I stepped up.
He and the way, like you said, it's written wonderfully, and it's actually kind of a climax to Glockta's character and his arc of how ruthless he is and how bad he is. Oh, now he's just another puppet of Bias. But whenever he says they, he's talking about Bias and Valen and Bulk and the power at B. He's not talking about Hoth. He's talking about getting out who it is and being
power.
A threat. Exactly. And so he is already defying the other power. He is already defying his what he thinks is his true nature of being a ruthless evil bastard. He's doing the thing he thinks is best, and the thing that he thinks is not just what's convenient.
And I mean, this has always come up repeatedly over Glockta's arc, that he will not back away from hurting anybody.
Yeah,
be it women, children, innocent people, whoever. He will hurt them if it will suit his own ends.
But it's just not true.
This is it's not true. It is absolutely not true. Because he will protect innocence if he can.
Yeah, he still is kind of a hero.
He's absolutely absolutely hero. The guy that we thought there was going to be the villain all the way from the beginning.
And now he's you know, the character arc culmination is just so creative, and it's set up like, you know, it's shown that he's not this way before, but we're just told repeatedly. So when people talk about how it's like, oh, the end of Last Argument King is just so sad, depressing, it's not the ending I wanted, blah 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 blah. I'm like, what? Like, this is brilliant.
Thank you for that, fellas. Yeah, okay. So then, you know, okay. Yeah. Okay. So then Glocta says, you know, he's like, look, we've all done things that we're not proud of. That changes nothing. I promise that I will look to your welfare, and I see no other way. And she doesn't even hesitate. She goes, then yes. She grabs the ring and puts it on her finger. There's nothing to think about, is there? And it's just like, okay. It's like,
I love how pragmatic Artie is here. She's just like, yep, this is the only choice that I have right now. Or at least it's the best choice that I have right now.
Mm-hmm. So she, you know, then she goes like, who would have thought, you know, all these years ago when I was watching you fence my brother, that I would one day wear your ring. You were always the man of my dreams. Which
is so sweet.
Yeah, no. But Glocta in her monologue goes, and now of your nightmares.
But I love that you know, I always had this kind of headcanon that Glocta isn't nearly as disgusting as he thinks he is.
Yeah.
And definitely not. You know, the only other person that we ever see the perspective of that says he's disgusting is Giselle in the early books, where he's a complete fucking idiot and a bigot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there is always the chance that he's not actually that disgusting.
Yeah,
I think
it's just
Go ahead, Jeffrey. I'm sorry.
No, you go ahead. I talk a lot. Go ahead.
I just was gonna say, I think that he definitely is repulsive, and many characters do say, you know, offhand, even like in the previous chapter, oh yeah, he's definitely repulsive, but he also kind of dictates how repulsive he is. Many times he leers and he like acts more creepy than he is, and he says terrible things. But like whenever he's just chilling out and talking, yeah, he may be not as attractive as he used to be, but the base is still there. You know, like he's not working with nothing.
Yeah, right. Vestiges of past glories and all that stuff.
Yeah, I mean, you think about this. You relate this to a like a modern day kind of perspective, where, like I say, a couple get married and then the husband goes off to war and he comes back and he's, say, a paraplegic, or had half his face blown off and repaired by plastic surgery or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you would be a horrible person for saying, oh, you know, I don't love this person anymore because they're ugly.
Yeah.
And you know, it's a much deeper layer to that, and you know, Artie can actually see that, I think.
Yeah. So, you know, she, again, like we said, she's didn't hesitate really, and then she says, she makes a joke. She goes, "You couldn't have gotten a bigger stone," because he had the biggest stone that Valiant and Bulk had to offer put on that goddamn ring. It was
that's just like a blood diamond.
Yeah. And then he goes, you know, only if I raided the treasury could I got something, you know, good, a bigger stone. Now at this point, a kiss would be traditional, but under the circumstances, she steps forward, and he kind of like looks.
Clark is like, "Oh fuck."
Yeah, he's like, "Oh, I'm sorry. You know, obviously I'm out of practice." And then she says, "If I am to do this, I mean to do it properly." And he, you know, says, "Oh, like to make the best of it, do you mean?" She goes, "To make something of it anyway." They get closer and closer. She looks into his eyes and touches his cheek. And then her hand around his face, her fingertips pressing tight into his jaw, and bam, they are kissing. Bow, wacka, wow, wow. Our boy Glocta, his left leg is trembling. He had to cling tight to his cane because he is about to bust.
I love how even now Giselle, Glocta is like, pretense, of course. How could any woman want to touch this ruined body?
Right, pretense. What else could it be? And yet she does it so very, very well. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the end of the chapter.
Also, side note, she does lick the empty spot of his gums.
Yeah, it's like, ooh, kinky.
Can't take it. You
Well,
gotta make it kind of gross.
Everybody has their preferences.
Yeah.
Lit my gums, daddy.
Yeah. Listen, man. I get it, Artie. Get it. So yeah, that's the end of the chapter. How would you boys rate it?
I'm gonna rate it.
Go ahead.
8 out of 9.
Mm-hmm.
I like the exposition. I like the catching up. I liked how Giselle was like, oh, fuck you, Baez. I like how, we're getting to see Glockton's position, and I fucking love the entire end scene of this chapter. It's set up so well. It's written excellently, and some people might think it's, out of left field, but it's like, it's really, really good writing. And I every time I read it, I'm still like picking out different subtleties of, things that Artie says and the way they interact and how they just work with each other so well for both in they're not really like, it's not that's about the romance, they're just extremely compatible, and I just think it works out really, really well. They feel like real people who are in a real position, and they're just gonna make it work.
I mean, you're absolutely right, Harrison. Like, this is, I don't care what anybody says, this is absolutely set up, and this is a real romance. This isn't a fantasy romance where everybody's perfect and everybody's just like, oh, I don't know. This is reality. This is the way that real relationships work. Mm-hmm. You accept the flaws of your partner,
mm-hmm.
and you just go with it, and you go with it, and you make it work.
Yeah.
So yeah, 8 out of 9.
Yeah, I have to give it 8 out of 9 too. I really enjoyed the chapter. It was well done for the reasons you guys have said. And then, like, let's not forget that we do see, like, we start off by seeing Glockta's seamless transition into being a powerhouse, like a decision maker. Obviously, a decision maker only as much as one can be under the thumb of Baez. But we see that transition. He picks up on what Baez would require without really any kind of like growing or learning pains. As you guys said, we see Giselle still coming into his own, standing up to Baez, and in some ways, and then obviously the whole switcheroo, the bait and switch in terms of like thinking, oh my God, is he gonna kill Artie? No, he's just gonna make her fucking sad. No, I'm kidding. He saves her life. So. And that decision will also have big ramifications in the future. Anywho, though, that's a trifecta, I believe. 8 out of 9 all across the board, right? Alrighty, so let's move on to let's move on to our final segment, which is our character spot, because we don't have a community interaction segment for this week. So, gents.
Well, it's going to be Lord Chamberlain Hoff, right?
Yeah.
Because we've made a communal decision to not do any of the main characters, and we're going to do, I think they all deserve their own individual episodes, or at least their own individual segments at some point.
Yeah. Right, and we talk about them so much anyways, like we talk about their arcs, and we just did with Glockta and all that. So it's definitely one of those things where we definitely love talking about them. We probably will continue to do so, but they get a lot of coverage anyway, so we like to point out some of the other characters, kind of the intention of the character spot.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Lord Chamberlain Hoff. First time we were introduced to him, he's sort of this sort of flippant, like magistrate. He's been sitting around doing his job for like, 30, 40 years.
Mm-hmm.
See, that old?
Completely, yeah. I like to imagine him as like a 50-year-old at least.
Oh, okay. I was thinking maybe in the 40s, but okay, I can see 50. Yeah.
So yeah, he's been doing this job for a long time, and in the Blade itself, he's just like, yeah, this is crap. Move on. This is crap. Move on. And he's just chugging wine all day.
Yeah, because think about who his king was, who he's supposed to be in charge. He's basically just doing the king's job. He can't be like the Chamberlain. He is basically the king because the king is incompetent. He can't do anything.
At least on the front end, yeah.
Yeah.
Like on the customer facing end, if you're in business.
That's true.
Is it the customer facing end?
Well, yeah. Well, Baez basically treats the union as a business, so that's basically the way it works.
What an entrepreneur!
You got the front end and the back end.
Mm-hmm.
The Archlector's the back end, and the Lord Chamberlain's the front end.
Makes sense. And do we want to talk about how he, in the last couple of, what we've seen is he's been very, let's just say, what's the word, like a lapdog for Giselle? He's like, sir, come here, Hoff, come here. They need blankets.
It's the first time that he's had an actual proper king to deal with, and he adapts to it very well. He does the job that the Lord Chamberlain is meant to do. I mean, literally the word Chamberlain literally means the person that runs his chambers. So historically, the Chamberlain is the one that like empties his chamber pots and makes sure everything is okay for the king. And nothing else.
We like that, don't we? No, we don't.
Is that all right, Lord Chamberlain?
No. Oh God,
I was going to say that when we first chose our titles back in the day, but I'll bring it up now.
All this time.
Yeah, so the Chamberlain does the king's bidding, and that is what he is kind of evolved into.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
which is good, isn't it? Yeah, Harrison, what do you think?
Yeah, I think that he actually is getting to do his job, and so he's actually, he doesn't. I don't think he minds being like quote unquote cowed by Giselle, because that's what he was meant to do. It's probably kind of a relief that he can, do what he's got to do again. And he, like you said, he adapts really well, and he even. We kind of see it as a negative thing because of where the character's positions are, but he's absolutely right to come to Glock to be, listen, there's this thing going on. I think this girl's pregnant with it. I know you're close, so I can handle it for you, sir. But listen, like, we got to get this handled. It's for the king. This is what my job is. And of course, it's funny because Glock puts him down, but he makes the right call.
No, you're right. You're right. And Hoff is going to be very confused. He's like, so you're married now. Right.
That is a very human transition, though, isn't it? Like the fact that he tries to tell Glock what to do.
Mm-hmm.
And he tries to tell Giselle what to do.
Mm-hmm.
Back in that chapter when he throws the goblet at the guy's head.
Yeah,
he isn't very good at that job, is he? He's not very good at ruling. Because he just tells every single person that comes to him with a problem to basically fuck off.
Listen, that's what ruling is. That's what running things is, all right? You need to understand and respect that, all right?
Yeah. Lord Chamberlain Hoff is basically Tyrion from Game of Thrones. I drink and I know things.
Yeah, right. Oh, and honorable mention to Eris Tan Caspa. For those who might get confused, she actually does not appear in the Heroes. This is the last time we see her.
Yeah, that's Alice. That's somebody else.
Yeah.
I think it was just me that was confused about that.
No, I was. The first time I read it too, actually. I was confused. I thought because of how Jo has reoccurring characters, it almost feels like she should be. It makes sense that Brent was Caspa's best friend, and, so then, he got with her cousin, and it would make sense. But it doesn't happen that way. So, it's but subtle mention to her, like I kind of mentioned it before. I like that she is all dainty and stuff, but then she's like, they show her again like in the in the thick of it, trying to help these men, the wounded and all that. Mm-hmm. So that was interesting.
And they're almost like a Florence Nightingale kind of character.
Yeah.
And if anybody doesn't know about Florence Nightingale, look her up. Read some books about it. She's an absolutely fascinating character who plays that kind of role.
So, we good to go?
Yep.
That's our show, everyone. We want to thank you all for listening and supporting this podcast. As you all know, this is a passion project for the three of us, and your support means a lot.
Join us next week as we cover The First Law, Tea and Threats, and Behind the Throne.
And make sure you follow us on all of our social media, and take a look at our newly updated website, circleoftheworld.com.
And if you haven't already, please subscribe to our podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, or any podcast app that you use. And please make sure to rate and review this podcast. Thank you all again for listening.
Responsibility seems to have improved him.